Hello there. My name's John Pryor Morris and I'm a trustee here at Inso Court, which you see behind me. And I want to welcome you in this lockdown season of Advent to what we hope will be a successful rendition of Scrooge at a Social Distance. I'll tell you a bit about the house first in case you're new to it. It's got a checkered history. It was built in the middle of the 19th century by the coal-owning Inso family, who no doubt did their share of exploiting labour in mining and exploiting the black gold of the Rhondda Valley. But unlike Ebenezer Scrooge, they weren't averse to spending their wealth. Over 2 generations, they turned a collection of farmed fields here in Llandaff into what was said to be the finest house in West Cardiff, surrounded by many acres of ornamental parkland, which have since been overbuilt with a housing estate after the family left the court in the 1930s. And after they'd left, in World War II, it became a centre for civil defence, and later, of course, it became a much-loved local community centre and library here in Llandaff. In the 1980s, it fell on hard times, but 25 years of community campaigning led to its importance to Cardiff's history being recognised, and we formed a charitable trust to take over its restoration and management from the local authority. In the trust's hands, it's been going from strength to strength, only to be stopped in its tracks last March by this COVID-19 pandemic, since when, of course, it's been all hands to the pumps to try to get through this crisis. The Treasurer and the staff have done wonders in winning government and what charitable grants are available, but we thought that to do our little bit, we volunteers would plan a series of 30-minute entertainments to small, socially distanced audiences. And we were just getting going on that when the current restrictions put a stop to it. So instead of cancelling this particular entertainment, my friend Richard Berry and I are going to film the reading just as though it's a live performance with improvised sound effects and all. And we hope to stream it out in the hope that a number of you might enjoy it enough to make a voluntary donation of £5 or so to the Inso Court Trust. If you do so, you would be helping to give this amazing community project a chance to continue to serve the community for years to come. I'll give you details of how to donate in just a moment, so do please have a pen ready if you're willing. We're going to film it in the richly decorated room now called the Reading Room, which is inside the house. So I'm going to reappear there shortly in the guise of Charles Dickens. I'll be doing a crude representation of him to tell the story with Richard Berry. And we want to thank Richard Berry's son, Sion, the filmmaker, who has been doing the filming for us. So we hope you enjoy. Let's go to the reading room. Well, here we are in the reading room, and here am I in my Charles Dickens impersonation costume with my contemporary spectacles, for which I apologise. Now, in Victorian times, this room was James Inso's dining room, with decorations by the painter Fred Weeks, who did so much to assist the decorations that William Burgess had for Cardiff Castle. This frieze of the 4 seasons was painted by him. But James' son Fred Inso made it his after-dinner smoking room, where ladies could be spared the gentlemen's tobacco fumes. However, these days we call it the reading room, and so this is where we shall do our reading for your entertainment. It'll last just 30 minutes, and after which, if you're willing to make a donation, the quick and easy way to do it, I hope you've got your pens ready, is to use your mobile phone to text the word INSO to the number 70085. This will give the Trust £5. I'll say it again, that's texting INSO to the number 70085. And of course, if you're feeling more generous than £5, you can simply repeat the exercise by repeating your text to INSO to 70085. But most of all, we hope you enjoy our short 30-minute reading of A Christmas Carol under the title Scrooge at a Social Distance. Thank you. Marley was dead. There's no doubt whatever about that. Scrooge knew it for certain. He was Marley's sole executor, sole administrator, sole residuary legatee. So there can be no doubt that Marley was dead. Otherwise, nothing wonderful can come of the story I'm going to relate to you. So, it was Christmas Eve. The city clocks had just gone 3, but it had not been light all day. And the fog came pouring in through every chink and keyhole. And who was sitting busy in his counting house? Old Scrooge.
Yeah.
Yes, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, covetous old sinner who iced the office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree even on Christmas Eve. The door of his counting house was kept open to keep his eye on Bob Cratchit, his 15-shilling a week clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond was copying letters and trying, unsuccessfully, poor fellow, to warm himself at the one candle. All at once there came a cheerful voice in the doorway. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!"
Humbug.
"Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure."
I do, nephew. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas upon his lips would be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Oh, Uncle Scrooge, don't be so angry. Come and dine with us tomorrow, eh?
Bah, humbug. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? Good afternoon.
Oh, well, whatever you say. I'll keep up my Christmas humour to the last and wish you a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
I have work to do. Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon. And shut the door behind you.
Too late. For before the door could be closed, 2 portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. The portly gentlemen had books and papers in their hands, and they bowed to Scrooge. "At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor, who suffer greatly at this time for want of common necessaries and comforts, sir."
Are there no prisons? And the union workhouses, the treadmill and the poor law? Are they not still in operation?
Oh, they're all very busy, sir.
I'm very glad to hear of it. I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course.
Yeah, well, a few of us are raising a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. Now, sir, what can we put you down for?
Nothing.
Nothing? You wish to be anonymous,
I wish to be left alone, sirs. I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. Those who are badly off, they can go there.
Many cannot go there, sir, and many would rather die.
If they would rather die, then they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. It is not my business, it is theirs. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Well, seeing clearly that it would be useless to pursue their point, the gentlemen withdrew into the foggy, piercing, biting dark,
leaving me to my books. But it was not long before a further disturbance. A scant and hungry nose bent down at my keyhole to regale me with a Christmas carol. I seized my ruler with such energy of action that the child fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog and the frost.
Well, at length, the hour of shutting up the counting-house arrived, and with an ill will, Scrooge dismounted from his stool, thereby admitting the fact to his expectant clerk, who instantly snuffed out his candle and put his hat on his head.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?
Well, if it's quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop you half a crown, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound.
The clerk smiled faintly. It's only once a year, sir.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have it. Be here all the earlier the next morning.
The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no greatcoat, poor fellow, ran home to Camden Town as fast as he could pelt. Scrooge made his way to his usual melancholy tavern to take his usual melancholy dinner before going home to his gloomy, melancholy chambers, which had once belonged to Jacob Marley. And when he got there, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having the key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker not a knocker, but Marley's face. Yes, Marley's face, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead, with a dismal light about it, much like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. To say that Scrooge was not startled would be untrue. But as he looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it became a knocker once again. He turned the key instantly and walked in sturdily and lighted his candle. He went upstairs to his cold bed.
And then, just as I was falling asleep, I heard a clanking noise. It was as if someone were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine cellars down below, and then I heard the noise coming upstairs. Then it came straight towards my door. It was Marley, in his pigtail, waistcoat, tights and boots, a chain wound about him like a tail, made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that I could see right through him to the 2 buttons on his coat behind. It spoke to me.
Hear me, Ebenezer. I've come to warn you that if a man's spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned after his death to wander forever through the world, dragging behind him the chain he forged in life. I made this chain link by link and yard by yard, because in life my spirit never walked beyond our counting house.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? The common welfare of mankind should have been my business. Charity, mercy, and benevolence should have been my business. Hear me now, Ebenezer. Your chain was as full and heavy as mine 7 eves ago, and you have laboured on it since all those Christmases. I have come to warn you, so that you may yet have a chance of escaping my dread fate. This night, Ebenezer, you will be visited by 3 spirits. Hear them, Ebenezer. For if you do, you may yet avoid the dread death I tread.
And indeed, that very night, there came to me in my dreams first the ghost of all my Christmases past. Just as the bell tolled one, light flashed up in the room. The curtains of my bed, they were drawn aside, and I found myself face to face with a figure like a child, yet also like an old man. The arms were long and muscular, and it wore a tunic of the purest white, and held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand.
I am the ghost of Christmas past, your past. Take heed and walk with me, for your welfare's sake.
Oh, the ghost, it took me through happy times and sad. I was able to watch myself as an apprentice in happy Mr. Fezziwig's house one Christmas Eve.
Yo, ho, 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 my boys, it's Christmas Eve. No more work tonight. Come on, let's have the shutters up.
And in came the fiddler with a music book.
And in came all the young men and women in the business.
And in came the cook and the milkman.
And the boy with the bad master from over the way.
And there was cake.
And cold roast.
And mince pies.
And plenty of beer.
And how I remembered us dancing the night away.
Till at 11 o'clock, Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations at the door, and shaking hands with every person as they left, wished each and every one a Merry Christmas.
And as I watched my young former self turn down the lamps and retire to bed quite happy, the ghost, observing me wipe something from my cheek, said,
"Something the matter?"
Dear old Fezziwig, he had the power to make our service sad or happy, a pleasure or a toil. He chose the happy path. I should just like to have been able to say a word or two to my clerk right now. That's all.
Our time is short. We must move on.
And we did. And again I saw myself older now, a man in the prime of life, with my face beginning to show the signs of care and avarice. Beside me sat a fair young girl, whose eyes bore tears which sparkled in the light. She spoke.
"Ebenezer, our contract is an old one, made when we were both poor and content to be so. But now you are changed, Ebenezer. You now weigh everything by gain."
But my dear, there is nothing upon which this world is so hard as poverty, and nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth.
But you would not choose me, a dowerless girl, if you were to meet me now. I release you from your vow, Ebenezer. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. She left him, and they parted.
Spirit, show me no more. Conduct me home.
One shadow more, an office window with a candle burning. Your partner Marley on the point of death, and you, Ebenezer, at work on Christmas Eve, alone, quite alone in the world.
Remove me. I cannot bear it.
I told you these were shadows of the things that have been. They are what they are. Do not lay the blame on me.
Leave me. Take me back. Haunt me no more.
The spirit faded, and Scrooge sank back into a heavy sleep.
And then...
Deck the hall with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Sing the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la.
A jolly green giant appeared, glorious to see, in easy state, upon a couch and clothed in deep green mantle bordered with fur. He bore a glowing torch like Plenty's horn, which shed its light on me as I came peeping through the door.
Come in! I am the ghost of Christmas present. Come in and know me better, man.
Spirit, I have learned a lesson which is working now. If you have aught to teach me, then conduct me where you will.
And so, the ghost of Christmas present led Scrooge straight to the dwelling of Scrooge's clerk,
where all unseen I saw Mrs. Cratchit's poorly dressed, laying the table with two smaller Cratchits, came tearing and screaming in, that when they were outside the baker's, they had smelt the goose. And in came Bob, their father, with his threadbare clothes, cleaned up and brushed to look seasonable, and upon his shoulder, bearing a little crutch, and with his little limbs supported by an iron frame, he bore a little crippled boy.
And how did Tiny Tim behave? Asked Mrs. Cratchit. As good as gold. He told me coming home that he hoped that people saw him in the church because he was a cripple. And it might be pleasant to them to remember at Christmas who it was that made beggars walk and blind men see.
Bob carried the child to his stool beside the fire, where he held his withered little hand as if he dreaded that the child might be taken from him.
And now all the family were gathered, and Bob, turning up his cuffs, compounded some hot mixture in a jug with gin and lemons, and put it on the hob to simmer.
Master Peter and the two young Cratchits went to get the goose from the baker, with which they soon returned in high procession, and then such a bustle ensued that you might have thought a goose as rare a bird as a swan.
Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigour.
Miss Belinda sweetened up the apple sauce.
Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy hissing hot.
And at last the dishes were set on, and grace was said.
Then a breathless pause, as Mrs. Cratchit plunged the knife into the breast, and as the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all around the board.
Ah! And Tiny Tim beat feebly on the table with the handle of his knife, and he cried, "Hurrah!"
Bob said he didn't believe there was ever such a goose cooked. Its tenderness, size, and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration, and everyone was steeped in sage and onion to the eyebrows.
But now Mrs. Cratchit left the room to take the pudding up and then bring it in, and in half a minute she entered, flushed but smiling proudly, with the pudding blazing in half quartern of ignited brandy and bedecked with Christmas holly stuck into the top.
Hurrah! Hurrah! And at last, the dinner was all done. The cloth cleared and the fire made up.
Apples and oranges were put onto the table.
And a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth with the family display of glass.
2 tumblers and a custard cup without a handle.
These held the hot stuff from the jug as well as golden goblets would have done, and Bob served it out with beaming looks while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and crackled roundly.
Then Bob proposed a toast.
A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us all. Which all the family re-echoed.
And last of all, that little crippled boy, Tiny Tim, said,
God bless us, everyone.
I bent my eyes, but raised them when I heard Bob say my name.
I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. What? Cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening. I wish I had that odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man here. I'd give him a piece of my mind I ought to feast upon. I hope he'd have a good appetite for it. Oh, my dear, said Bob, it's Christmas Day. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from waterproof. Their clothes were scanty.
But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded in the bright sparklings of the Spirit's torch, I had my eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim until the last. And I asked the Spirit if Tiny Tim was going to live.
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
Oh no, kind Spirit. Oh no, say that he will be spared.
Why? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population.
I hung my head to hear my own words quoted by the Spirit. And then I found myself in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come. It was coming like a mist along the ground towards me, shrouded in a deep black garment, with nothing visible but one outstretched hand. It seemed to scatter gloom and misery before it. I feared this silent shape so much that my legs, they trembled beneath me. It signed for me to follow, and it bore me deep into the heart of the city amongst the merchants as they clinked money in their pockets and talked in little groups. All unseen, I advanced on one of them and I listened to their talk.
Old Scratch has got his own at last. Mm-hmm. Oh, when did he die? Last night. What has he done with his money? Oh, God knows. It'll be a cheap funeral, for upon my life I don't know anybody who'll go to it.
And then the scene changed to a bare room, and there on a bare, uncurtained bed, unwatched, unwept, plundered and bereft of all sheets and clothes, there lay a body. I did not recognize it at first, but I came to understand it was my own. And then the phantom took me into a dark alley where the charwoman, the laundress and the undertaker were dividing up my things between them.
Who's the worse for loss for a few things like these, eh? Not him, wicked old Scrooge. Why wasn't he natural in his lifetime, eh? Yeah. If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him instead of lying there gasping out his last there all alone by himself, eh?
And I said, Spirit, if there is any person in the town who feels emotion at my death, show me that person, I beseech you.
The phantom returned Scrooge at once to Bob Cratchit's house,
where I found the mother and all the children seated round the fire beside a vacant little chair that had been Tiny Tim's. The mother and the daughters were very quiet. They were waiting for their father to return, and when he came in, wrapped in his comforter, he had need of comfort, poor fellow. For he broke down all at once.
"Oh, my child, my little child."
And then he said,
"I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was but a little child, we shall not quarrel easily among ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it."
Good Spirit, I am not the man I was. Assure me that I may yet change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. I will honour Christmas in my heart, and I shall try to keep it all the year.
Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw the phantom shrink, collapse, and dwindle down to a bedpost.
And then I awoke. The bedpost was my own. The bed was my own. And best of all, the time before me was my own to make amends in. Running to the window, I opened it and put out my head. The Christmas church bells were ringing. I called down to a boy in Sunday clothes. Hey, boy! Do you know the poulterers on the corner?
I should hope so.
Have they sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there?
The one as big as me?
Yes?
Yeah, it's still there.
Well, good. Wonderful, boy. Go and buy it, and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I shall send it to Bob Cratchit by cab. He shan't know who sent it.
The chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy were only exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again and chuckled till he cried.
Oh, I decided to visit my nephew for their Christmas lunch.
And there was a wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, and wonderful happiness.
But I was early to the office next morning. I had set my heart on catching Bob Cratchit coming in late, and so indeed he did.
Bob was a full 18 minutes behind his starting time. His hat was off before he opened the door, and he crept to his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
What do you mean by coming here at this time of day? Step this way, sir, if you please.
Oh, it's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
I'll tell you what I'll do, my friend. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer, and therefore, I'm about to raise your salary.
Bob trembled and reached for the ebony ruler, thinking that he might have to knock Scrooge down and call the people in the court for help and a straight waistcoat.
I wish you a merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle. I'm going to raise your salary and endeavour to assist your family. And we shall discuss your affairs this afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop before you dot another I across another T, Bob Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. To Tiny Tim, who did not die, he became a second father. He became as good a man and as good a master as any the good old city ever knew. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well if any man alive possessed that knowledge.
And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.
Wherefore, Christian men, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, ye who now would bless the poor, shall yourselves find blessing.